Season 3 of Ricardo's Rules of Resilience podcast is brought to you by Triple R Nutrition. Triple R Nutrition specializes in very clean, very pure supplements that will help your body and at the same time disadvantaged young people from El Salvador form the tools to have a better life. Every product bought from Triple R Nutrition supports this vital ministry and your body and fitness goals. Go check them out.
That's right. Ricardo's Rules of Resilience. Tune in, people. Every episode is impactful. You become more burly just by listening. Let's go.
Welcome, everybody, to the Ricardo's Rules of Resilience podcast, the podcast where we give you the tools to withstand and recover from difficulties. I'm your co-host, Coach Alton, along with Coach Ricardo, and today, you guys, we got an awesome guest on. I got the pleasure to race against him at DEKA World Championships in December, and he is an Underdog training systems coach. We got AJ Golik in the call today. Thank you for joining us.
Thank you guys for having me. I'm excited to be here.
Awesome. So let's get right into it. If you could give the viewers just a quick elevator pitch on who you are and what you do.
Okay, yeah, so my name is AJ Golik. I am 24 years old, living on Long Island right now. I graduated with my master's in nutrition and dietetics, and I'm currently coaching for the Underdog training system for Underdog Fitness, primarily in the Hyrox hybrid space. I would say that's more of like my focus. I have a few clients across varying disciplines, but that's where I find the most confidence in coaching others. I compete also mainly in hybrid. I used to do some OCR stuff and some running races, but the chunk of my racing is in the DEKA and Hyrox spaces. So yeah, that's a little bit about me.
Yeah, and I forgot to mention in the intro, you won multiple age group titles in DEKA, and you even took home the elite male relay with our other guests on the podcast, Kevin Gregory, other Underdog coach there.
Yeah, he's the man. Yeah, that was our second year winning elite male teams, which is such an awesome experience and such a blessing. Like, to race with him, I mean, obviously the caliber of athlete that he is, but also to be able to go out there with the eyes on us and the target on our backs and be able to defend that was awesome. Like, the finish line moments are always such an incredible experience. So pleasure to do that with him.
That was an incredible race. And for those of our listeners who might not know, when you're at the DEKA World Championships, there's age group championships for individual and then for team races where you do it with a partner. Then there are elite, and those are the athletes that are racing for the money. The age group doesn't matter. The podium finishers get to take home some money for accomplishing that. So you can imagine people are in tip-top shape, racing to make that podium, take some money home. And so for AJ and Kevin to win that title 2 years in a row was incredible. I happened to be down in Dallas with Kevin when he tried to break his own world record with another athlete down there. And they came up just 1 second short in the teams. But then we all went to have some barbecue at one of the best places I've ever had barbecue in my life, Terry Black's. And over dinner, they were, having a little bit of banter about who's going to get it this year, who's going to get it this year. And sure enough, you guys were able to pull it in. Could you just walk us through that performance?
Yeah, I mean, there was definitely some back and forth, some talking, posts on social media, things like that. But that comes with competition. That's inevitable, especially when you know who you're racing, which from the leaderboard standings, but also from like what you see throughout the year, like you get a general idea of who's going to be on the start line with you. So that back and forth, that banter, like it's part of sport. So it's good to see as long as it stays civil, which it did.
When we were at dinner, it was not, I don't mean to say it was trash talking, just banter, Yeah,
exactly. Yeah, friendly and not super serious. But that race was the strong teams for the listeners who aren't super familiar with DEKA. The DEKA Strong is the shortest race discipline, no running involved. So then when you tackle it as a team of two, the margin for error just gets slimmer and slimmer and slimmer. Like, as an individual, if you make a mistake, there's a little bit of time that you can work with and try to make up ground or recover from the mistake, as long as it's not something like catastrophic, like blowing up on the bike. But in teams, especially male teams, the margin for error becomes minuscule. So Kevin and I have a strategy that complements both of us. For, I guess, a brief overview, it's like he does the stuff that big, strong dudes should do, and I do the stuff that smaller, more agile dudes should do. And we work very well together. Knowing that going in with our strategy, it was a little bit different from 2023, but very similar, just like minor changes. And we knew that in order to get on the podium or have a shot at winning, that we had to run nearly a perfect race. Last year, we only won by, I think, 3 seconds, 4 seconds. So we knew that, like I was saying, there's no wiggle room. You cannot mess up. You got to just execute your game plan. So the nerves were there. They always are. 3, 2, 1, go. Kind of just goes blank. Like, you don't think about it and you blink and you're already like halfway through the race. So we just executed our plan all the way through. I had a little bit of an error on the farmer's carry. I tripped over my own 2 feet. Like, I tripped on flat ground, so stumbled a little bit, recovered from that. Thankfully, Kevin was able to bail me out a little bit on the bike, which is a superpower of his, which everybody who has been to a DEKA has witnessed at least once. But other than that, like, we transitioned really well, we communicated well, we adjusted a little bit on the fly as we needed to, and then we were able to get across the finish line first and have another cool finish line moment. So super awesome, and like I said, just grateful to be able to race with him and have that experience again.
Yeah, I was able to referee during that race, so it was awesome to see from a first-hand just point of view, just to see how fast that course is and how hard you guys are going. It's really awesome to see that, just that next level of the sport that there is. And you talked a little bit about nerves going into the race, so what are some ways, because obviously you're highly successful, what are some ways that you help to just keep your, not necessarily control them, but use them to your advantage to help make sure you're performing at your best?
I mean, when I first started racing, that was not in my wheelhouse at all. I would get super nervous before races all the way up until right before I was about to start, and then it would take me a little bit into the race to like mentally flip that switch of like, okay, like now you're here, so there's nothing to be nervous about. You just have to go. With time, and also with talking to other people in the space and coaches, like Kevin has helped me tremendously, talking to other athletes both on the Underdog team but also outside of the Underdog team about mindset and confidence, and kind of building that up and learning how to deal with those emotions. Because when you're competing in something and you're passionate about it, the nerves are pretty inevitable. It's hard to go into a race or be preparing for a race and just be like deadpan, no emotion, especially if it's something that you care about. So I always get nervous. I would say a couple days leading up to the races is when the thoughts start to spiral and the mental demons start to creep in, and you get all like, you start second guessing yourself a little bit. Things that I've done to help me be able to control those emotions a little bit more, or at least like come to terms with them and like accept them and not try to fight them, has been like journaling. I keep a journal. I'm not like an everyday journaler, but frequently, especially when I'm starting to feel a little bit more overwhelmed mentally, I'll journal. I also like to goal set and write goals. So like my phone notes always has like a list of goals, short-term, long-term, couple years down the road, tomorrow. Like I'll just like write things that I want to achieve, big, small, as simple as like PRing in a DEKA Strong or winning a team's world championship. Like they vary, but I think that helps me conceptualize like what I want to do and what I want to achieve, and then allows me to kind of remind myself that those things are achievable. So like positive affirmations, words of encouragement from others that I've saved and put into my phone notes, but also ones that like I've written for myself. I have a few like go-to songs I'll listen to, books I'll read. We read The Champion's Mind, like Ricardo knows, it was a big talk in the Underdog team chat, because that was kind of like our December book of the month. I read that last year before DEKA Worlds, read it again this year before DEKA Worlds. It helps kind of keep your mind at ease, remind you of the things that you've been working towards or have like learned and taught yourself. So a lot of outside mindset work has helped me be able to get to the point now where I get super nervous, and some races I'm more nervous than others, but being able to like harness those emotions and use them more as encouragement rather than letting them kind of like consume me and be detrimental to my races.
You know, AJ, some of our listeners, obviously, they wouldn't know your story. They're being introduced to you today. But, I mean, you've had some incredible accomplishments, as we've mentioned, including individual world champion and then the elite world championship teams. I mean, you've done some amazing things. And if anyone's watching the video version, you can look over AJ's right shoulder to our left and see a wall that's probably had to be reinforced to hold up all those first place. You have to put in some steel beams. That's a lot of gold hanging up there.
There's some stuff over there. Yeah, that's like my wall of accomplishments and then some additional things. But yeah, I mean, it's been a journey because I mean, when I first started, my background is team sports, which we were kind of like briefly talking about. I played lacrosse and then played lacrosse through college and came from a zero running background unless I was required to run at practice. I never ran on my own. Running to me was horrible. Then made a little bit of a shift in 2020, summer of 2020, inevitably because the whole world was running. I started to run as well, and found enjoyment in it, which to me prior to that was an impossible concept. So I started to really enjoy running. I was training primarily CrossFit, following like a structured CrossFit programming, and then started to incorporate running and stumbled upon DEKA, and that's took me down this rabbit hole of now going on year 3 of like actually competing and training for it and working towards more specific things. And thankfully it's come with some really high highs and some great accomplishments. It's also come with its really low lows and its hardships and the struggles, but that's part of the process of it all. So it's been an awesome couple of years, and it's brought me friends and opportunities and so much fulfillment that I felt like I didn't have fully with team sports, and that I thought was kind of also missing in my life between the period of finishing up college lacrosse and then before I found like the hybrid and OCR scene to compete again. And it kind of bridged that gap, and it's been incredible. Like such an insane journey to look back on even now. So I'm excited to see where the next couple of years can take me.
You know, and that is the beauty of the time that you're living in. You know, when I was coming out of college, I mean, of course, you could run 5Ks or marathons, but, you know, other than running, once you got out of high school or college athletics, you know, in college, even if you're not doing the athletics, there's still intramurals and plenty going on. But, you know, either way, you get out of college, and it used to be that there was just not a lot other than, you know, 5Ks or marathons or whatever that you could do. And now we're fortunate that, you know, people who have been in shape and athletic and love the competition and love pushing themselves, or just need a goal, just need something to shoot for so that it keeps them motivated. You know, there's these Spartan events, these hybrid races. There's just a lot more for people to continue in their fitness and competition journey, you know, for life. Fortunately, they break them up into age groups so that, you know, even as you're in your 50s and 60s and 70s, you can still get in there and feel like you got a chance, right? Because there's others. But, you know, your journey was not without adversity. And obviously that's the theme of this podcast is, you know, we talk about being able to withstand and recover from difficulties. And, you know, one of those was last year. You finished Chicago Hyrax, which was just a few weeks before the World Championship in Dallas, and had some bad news.
Yeah. We'll backtrack to, that was probably, I would say, my biggest moment of adversity so far in like my hybrid racing timeline of life. I raced Hyrox Chicago, which was November 12th or 13th of 2023. DEKA Worlds being the first week of December. It was like the 6th and the 7th. I was coming off of an insane training block, so it was like a full 8 weeks of just pretty rigorous High Rocks training, because I was looking at High Rocks Chicago as the opportunity for a potential early season World Championship qualification. But if not, then it would just be a really good way to shake the rust off, get back into a competition of some sort in preparation for DEKA Worlds, and show up to High Rocks Chicago feeling great. My training block went really, really well. I felt like I was at one of a very good peak of fitness, and carrying that momentum, start my race, all goes great. I run, it's still, that race still is my current High Rocks Pro PR. It was a 104.19. So I run my tail off, have a really good race from an execution standpoint, from a feeling standpoint. I said to a few of my buddies afterwards, and Kevin as well, that felt like I was floating. Everything was going so perfectly. And I get to the wall balls, which is the last station of High Rocks, and all that's separating you from the finish line is 100 reps. And I start chipping away. I'm still feeling good. My body doesn't feel like it's breaking down. I'm chugging along. I'm on wall ball 96 out of 100. And I squat down. I feel my knee click. And my brain immediately goes, that wasn't good. I stand back up. I hear my knee click again. Throw it to the target, and I'm like, oh no, that's not good. I knew immediately. I had a similar knee injury playing lacrosse in my opposite leg, so I think I just had a moment of kind of PTSD, or a flashback moment where I knew what that feeling was, and I just knew it wasn't good. So I do my last 3 wall ball reps, and my mom took a video, and it looks like I'm moving in slow motion because my knee is immediately starting to swell. In said video, you see me peg leg across the finish line because my knee is not cooperating with me. Right after I cross the finish line, I make eye contact with my mom. She's standing off to the side, and I just shake my head. I knew right away that whatever it wasn't good. I get ice, I treat it, I do whatever I can in the moment in the venue. We fly home the following morning, and thankfully, if you're watching this, Dr. Queller, I have a good friend who is a very high-level athletic orthopedic. So I texted her right after the race and was like, don't know exactly what I did, but my knee looks like a balloon. I can't bend it past 30 degrees maybe. I was just feels like it's swelling and continuing to swell. So she was like, okay, when you get home, come and see me. Even before x-rays, MRIs, anything, she just looked at it and was like, you probably tore your meniscus. So I was like, that's not good news. I knew it wasn't good, but I was going in with false optimism of maybe she's just going to tell me it's swollen and I need to take ibuprofen. So she was like, yeah, it doesn't look good. We took the x-rays, and I came back. I had a 80% tear in my lateral meniscus and a 40% tear in my medial meniscus. So both sides, both ways that your meniscus runs, were torn. Not fully torn, but one torn to a very high extreme, and the other one was just partially torn. And like Ricardo mentioned, that was 3.5 weeks before DEKA Worlds, which for me is one of my priority races for the season. And all year, even though I'm racing other races and competing and stuff, all year your eyes are kind of focused on the big ones. And for me, that one was a big one. I was signed up to compete in all 3 individual races. I was signed up for the DEKA Fit teams with a crazy high-level DEKA athlete. And then I was signed up for strong teams with Kevin. But I told nobody, because I was like, if there is an off chance that I can figure this out and be able to compete, I'm going to compete. So I'm not going to start bailing on my plans and telling people that I can't race, or telling my partners that I'm injured. I still had that little bit of optimism left, which might sound crazy or might sound a little bit irrational, but there was a little bit of me that was like, it's still possible. So now I'm wrapped up, taped up in a brace, and anytime I'm out of the house. My training goes from essentially being at like peak volume and conditioning to doing whatever I can that doesn't put pressure on my leg, pressure on my knees, a lot of upper body stuff. 3 or so weeks I just spent trying to take care of myself. A lot of ice, a lot of stim, a lot of recovery, all the rehab movements, all the mobility exercises that I can do without injuring my knee, and then the training that I was also able to do without making the damage worse and kind of keeping it at bay. So then flash forward into the week before I'm leaving for Worlds, and I see Dr. Queller again. She gives me another round of antibiotics. If there was a chance that I could have done some super significant damage to my knee, she would have told me and like cut the optimism right up. So she was like, if you want to do this, like, you could probably do it. You just have to be smart, wear your brace, make sure you take care of it before, during, after the race, stay off of it, and just take it race by race. And if it means you only race once throughout the weekend, that's better than none. And if you can get through your whole weekend, even better. So she gave me a lot of confidence that, like, it might not be the best, but it's still possible. So I geared up as normal, prepared to take on the weekend. And then I was flying out on Thursday. Wednesday, I went to the gym and was just doing like a very light shakeout. It sounds stupid to say out loud, but I thought to myself, I haven't done a box step over since my injury. Like, let's see if my knee can handle it, which in hindsight, probably should have figured that out when I raced, because if I started the race and was moving well, I was most likely going to be able to do a box step over. But my foolishness wanted me to try on Wednesday. So I did a couple box step overs and it felt pretty decent. I did a few sets just to kind of shake that rust off and see how my knee would hold up in like a lateral movement, like demand. And of course, I come off the box and I step down and I hear another click. And right away, my knee starts to swell again. And I'll never forget it. I sat at the dinner table with my mom that night and was nearly in tears because I was like, should I even go? Like, now I wasn't back to square one, but it was like my knee now swelled up again, wasn't feeling great. The mobility felt scarce. And I was like, should we even get on the plane? What if I can't race? And her main point behind it all was like, I have so many friends and such a important community to me that would be competing. So even if I couldn't compete myself, like, the best thing to do for myself and for my teammates and my tribe of people is to show up and be there, whether I'm competing or not. And just, if it means being sidelined and being the biggest cheerleader all weekend, like, that would be my role. So we packed up our bags and we go to DEKA Worlds. And thankfully, I was able to race the entire weekend and make it out as healthy as I could be. So that was a battle to get there, physically and mentally. It took a lot out of me. Those 3 weeks were probably some of the toughest times mentally that I've been in terms of thinking about competition or leading into a competition, but also like my own expectations and like what I was hoping for and how I wanted to end the year versus what could have potentially been like the reality of it, of like not being able to even lace my shoes up and give it a shot. It was a really tough couple weeks, but it all worked out in the end.
That's a perfect example of one of Ricardo's rules of resilience, which is something is better than nothing, not letting the circumstances. If it would have been easy just to throw in the towel in that situation and just call it quits, what the heck, I tore up my knees, I can't do anything now, and just scrap it. But you kept on working, trying to do what you could, even required a little bit more upper body work, but you still got the work done, and it was able to all work out in the end. And as you mentioned previously, you were able to win that elite relay with Kevin back in 2023. So pretty incredible story of resilience there. That's pretty insane to be able to do that with that serious of a knee injury, and especially on the lateral and medial side of your knees. Pretty incredible stuff there.
Thank you. Yeah, I think that was what helped me a lot get through those couple weeks was reminding myself that the something is better than nothing. And if that something meant that I showed up to race and after the first run or after the first couple stations I couldn't continue because of the injury, then that was at least something. One thing that I kind of pride myself on and try to really stick to in like all areas of my life and all aspects is like, you don't know unless you try, and also not quitting like at all. Quitting is not something that like, even back to like when my mom was teaching me how to play like football and team sports, like there was no quitting, there was no stopping, like you finished when you were done. And I think that both the something is better than nothing mindset, but also not willing to throw in the towel or give up before I at least tried was what kept me steadily working towards getting to DEKA Worlds. And even if that something was then spending the weekend with all my friends and screaming our heads off, like that would have also been better than nothing. I mean, like we all just experienced Florida all together, and like that atmosphere, that energy, the team, like it's awesome. Even if you competed once throughout the weekend or you competed as many times as some of the crazy people on our team, like the entire weekend and the atmosphere of it in the venue, outside of the venue, it's just incredible to be around. And it's such a privilege to have so many people that are in your corner and really just fully cheering for you and supporting you, that if in 2023, if I was unable to compete, if I was sitting at home, I would have felt not only upset that I'm missing out and not being able to see all my friends, but I would have felt guilty because I know I can think back to almost every single one of my races. I don't think I've ever raced in silence. There's always been somebody there cheering for me, rooting me on, hoping that I succeed, hoping that I do well. So if I would have stayed at home because I wasn't able to compete and selfishly that like ruins my weekend, then that would have been doing a disservice to not only me, but to all the other people that have just spent the last 10 months cheering me on. So that also would have been something, and which
That's right.
would be better than nothing.
That's right. And, you know, another thing that we talk about, which Michael Caron, when he was a guest, he really believes in it as well, you know, but the one of our rules is helping others helps me more, right? And Michael Caron talked about the fact of, you know, what do you do when you're just about, you got people in these get burly, grind you down experiences, and they're just ready to give up. Get your eyes on a teammate. Get your eyes off yourself and on a teammate. And it's amazing how resilient you become. You have a whole new gear and a whole new ability that you're able to find when you just get your eyes off yourself and you focus on helping others, because in the end, it helps me more, right? And that's what you experienced that whole weekend. You know, AJ, you're not just a fierce competitor with many accolades, you're also coaching others. And could you just share with us briefly, what do you think it is that makes your people that you're coaching the most resilient? What are the things you see in the clients you have that makes them resilient and able to compete on such a high level?
That's a very good question. From the experience that I have with coaching, especially through like the Underdog training system and the clients that I've brought on, the common theme is like, I guess, goal setting. So every single client that I've worked with or have been working with, like during our introductory call, obviously there's like some icebreakers, the casual conversation of like, hi, I'm AJ, and we introduce ourselves and we talk and stuff. But one thing that we always dive into is like, what's your why and what do you want to achieve in X amount of time? So for like some of the DEKA 10-week clients that we brought on, like, who's like, what do you want to achieve at DEKA Worlds? Like, you qualified, you did the work to get there, you punched your ticket, but now when you get there, what do you want to achieve? Talking through that with them and explicitly writing down like measurable goals or very specific goals of like, I want to do this, I want to do this. It helps people find that extra gear when training gets tough, or when they wake up in the morning and they're feeling a little tired and it requires a little bit more energy to get to the gym, or anything like that. the fire burning a little bit more when in the back of your mind, you're reminding yourself, like, I set out to do this and I want to do this. So now this is the work that comes with it. And I think as a coach, doing that exercise with them, but also then reinforcing it when training gets tough or when they're giving you feedback from a training session. They said, like, my paces were bad, or my legs were hurting, or I didn't hit my splits today and the training session went poorly. Like, reinforcing to them that, like, the work will translate. Like, keep your head screwed on straight, keep your focus clear and your goals clear, and keep working. So even if you had a perfect session or if you had a poor session, you still put work in and that work will translate. And then you get to that point where the work's kind of done and you taper off a little bit, and then that's kind of where the extra mindset stuff kicks in. One of my clients, Lee, she's from the UK. She's in the 50 to 54 age group. She would send herself text messages. So on iPhone, you can quite literally text yourself and your message will then pop up on your phone. And she would text herself, like, I want to become a world champion. I want to be the 50 to 54 DEKA Fit world champion. She would text herself, which something we talked about, like, during our onboarding call, and then also throughout the course of the couple weeks, like, leading into DEKA Worlds, was the, what do you want to achieve and what are your goals? And then she just reinforced those to herself. And I would also remind her of, like, this is what you can achieve if you want it. So that those things, both in training and outside of training, help build the resilience. And I think that it all starts with, like, a powerful why and, like, a powerful purpose of why you're doing the things that you're doing. And I think that that keeps people resilient and willing to work through the adversity and willing to fight a little bit harder when they're knees deep in a training session and they feel like they can't go anymore, but they still have 5 minutes left. So I think that those aspects, both in training and outside of training, keep my clients resilient and also keep a lot of athletes that we talk to and encounter resilient. It's like having that explicit why and that drive to achieve something.
I love all that what you're talking about with whys and goals. And around the time of this recording, it's New Year's. Definitely, you hear a lot of people talking about their goals. And one thing I kind of realize is that a lot of people struggle with setting good goals, something that's measurable, something that they can pursue. In terms of that, it's kind of generic stuff that isn't really able to be tracked. So how do you, as a coach, make sure that people are really having those whys and goals that are going to be really powerful and embedded in their head, that's going to drive them through those tough training?
Also a great question. Something that I do for myself, which also I, like, try to preach and explain to, like, my clients and my athletes, is at the end of the day, the only person that you would be lying to is yourself if you set an unrealistic goal. So obviously I want my athletes to reach for the stars and shoot for the moon. I want them to achieve whatever they want to set their mind to, but there comes a time where reality needs to meet your goals so that they're on the same playing field. So I'll keep names confidential, but I had a client who, when I first started working with them, very, like, right off the bat, when we were talking about, like, our why and our goal setting and what we wanted to achieve through this training block and prior to their next race, their goal was explicitly, I want to qualify for Hyrox Worlds. I embraced it. I accepted it fully, and I always will, and I'll always back my athletes. And if that's what you want, we're going to work towards it, and we're going to put our blood, sweat, tears, time, effort, and energy into it. And then if it shakes out that way, great. And if not, we reassess. So that was what they wanted. We started training and putting the work in towards that goal. And that was the goal that they expressed to me and that we agreed upon of what we're working towards. And as time went on, my client became a little bit more realistic, seeing how training was going, how their mindset was processing through training, things that they wanted to achieve, and they reassessed their goals and came back to me and said that their goal is to hit this specific time, which would be like a 26-minute PR from their last race. Great. Now we have our eyes on a different target, and in my opinion, knowing that athlete and knowing their background, that's a extremely achievable target. So now let's laser focus on that and let's continue to work, and that's our goal. So for me as well, like when I'm writing my goals, I have some goals that are lofty and some things that could be a little bit of a reach and a little bit of a stretch, but you need those because that also keeps you motivated, because when that rolls around and if you do not hit that goal, you recycle that goal. So I have journal logs year over year that, like, for me, the last two full seasons I've been chasing a sub 33-minute DEKA fit time, and that goal has carried over onto my next list from 2022 to 2023 to 2024 because it was something I wanted to achieve, and I wrote it down every year. 2022, 2023, 2024. After 2022, crossed it off, no check mark. After 2023, crossed it off, no check mark. 2024, my literal last opportunity to do so. I run a 32:51 at Worlds, and I can check that box off. So you can write down goals that might not be achievable in this calendar year, or ones that are a little bit further to reach for, but the main, I guess, the heart of your goals and the chunk of your goals that you write down and that you set for yourself have to be super realistic to you, whether that's from an athletic standpoint, from an emotional standpoint, from a spiritual standpoint. You have to kind of have that hard look in the mirror of, is this something that I can actually achieve if I work towards it, or is this something that's unattainable? And I think that, like you were saying, with people setting very vague goals or setting New Year's resolutions that they don't wind up achieving in 2024 or 2025, whatever the year is because those goals aren't realistic to them. It's the goals that they see other people either achieving or other people setting for themselves. So you have to have that tough look in the mirror and, like, really take a look back at yourself and when you're writing your goals, and be able to put things on paper that are within the realm of possibility, that are ambitious and that you can strive for, but nothing that's gonna demoralize you if you don't achieve it. And then another thing that I try to have my athletes do, and that I also do for myself, is like setting smaller goals that lead to a bigger goal, so that it's not like an all or nothing mindset where you have this one goal at the end of the year, and if you don't achieve it, the whole year was a waste, which a lot of people also get caught up in. Is if they don't achieve this one big goal, then they look back at the last however many months or the year as it wasn't successful. But if you write down like smaller achievable goals throughout the year, you start to build that confidence. It's like a snowball, or what are those things in like cowboy movies that roll around? But as they roll, they build and grow in
tumbleweed.
size. A tumbleweed. Thank you. They build, they grow in size, they get a little bit heavier, they get a little bit more powerful. So if you set smaller goals throughout the course of the year leading to a bigger ultimate goal, you start to gain that confidence for yourself that, okay, I can put something on paper, I can work hard, I can work my butt off, and I can achieve it. So now when you look at your next goal, it's like, okay, well, I just checked off that box, and I know that it took time, effort, energy, and I had to work hard, but I did check that box. So now let's work for this one, because I can do it. I've seen myself do it. And you can instill that confidence in yourself that you can put something down on paper, you can work for it, and at the end of it, you can check that box off. So I think that those are like key things that I try to communicate with my athletes from personal experience and from learning and growing and talking to very insightful people and very intelligent people that have helped me build that resilience, but also be able to communicate that and share that with my athletes so that they can build that same resilience and set their goals.
So, AJ, we're very grateful that you would come and share with all our listeners these great practical tips. I mean, first of all, sharing your story of how you have had to be resilient and the things that worked for you, and these great practical tips of how you work with your clients to help them achieve great things. But there may be something we didn't ask you that you might want to share. So we always like to ask at the end of our podcast, was there anything we didn't ask you today that you would like to, a question we didn't ask, but you still want to answer anyway?
No, I don't believe so. I mean, I guess this will be a good time to shamelessly plug the Underdog Fitness Instagram and my personal Instagram. But no, you guys did awesome. We covered a ton of stuff, so I hope that listeners are able to at least take something away from this conversation. And it was awesome to be on. If you do want to keep up with myself throughout the 2025 campaign, you can find me primarily on Instagram. It's at Alexander Golik with 2 Ks, or if you want to follow the Underdog team, Ricardo's lovely green sweatshirt, you can find that Instagram as underdog.fitness.gym, and keep up with our big, crazy, passionate group of athletes that are running around wearing a ginormous Finley face.
Yeah, the Boston Terrier.
And if someone's interested in working with you or any other Underdog Training Systems coach, what's the best way for them to do that?
Yes, so best way to do that would be to reach out. You can either communicate directly with one of the coaches. We have 5 now coaches under the Underdog Training System. So it's myself, Kevin Gregory, Kayla Cittadino, Ricardo, and Alton, the wonderful gentleman sitting here, and then also Molly Crowley. So if you see a coach that you would like to specifically work with, you can reach out to them directly. Or if you're just looking to get into the Underdog Training System and be a part of the Underdog team, you can reach out through Instagram direct message or Facebook direct message, and we'll get in contact with you and set up a call and pair you with a trainer that will fit your goals and your needs and what disciplines that you are trying to compete in or want to work towards. So yeah, I would say social media is probably the easiest direct point of contact. You can also send an email if that suits you. It's at underdogfitnessgym@gmail.com, and we'll make sure that we take care of you and pair you up with the best coach for you.
Thank you so much for being with us today, AJ. It's been a pleasure. We appreciate your time and your willingness to give this to us. And listeners, you've heard how you can get a little more Underdog, or specifically AJ, in your life. So do reach out. We do love to help you become more and more resilient. If you need specifically resilience coaching that has nothing to do with athletics, reach out to me. Coach.Ricardo Instagram, or Ricardo Molinax on Facebook. We can help you become more and more resilient and give you the tools you need to withstand and recover from difficulties. Go be resilient.
Season 3 of Ricardo's Rules of Resilience podcast is brought to you by Triple R Nutrition. Triple R Nutrition specializes in very clean, very pure supplements that will help your body and at the same time disadvantaged young people from El Salvador form the tools to have a better life. Every product bought from Triple R Nutrition supports this vital ministry and your body and fitness goals. Go check them out.